Hi, everybody. This is Richard Sachs, host of Lost Arts Radio. This is Lost Arts Radio live, except for this week, it's not live because in order to manage our Christmas schedule, we're recording this actually on the Tuesday before Saturday. And so that's just this particular episode. We're recording it on Tuesday the 18th. Because of the Christmas schedule. So I apologize for any events that I don't know about yet that might happen Wednesday through Saturday, but if you're lenient with us, that should work out okay. I hope a lot of you are familiar with the Matrix trilogy. I wanted to talk about it today in relation to news because, as you know, unless you're brand new to this show, which you might be, this is not a comprehensive review of the news of the week, or even, the 2 days I've got this time. If you want to really get the best presentation of that I know of that's comprehensive, just go to this other news show that I can't mention or else we'll get banned right away. And it's run by a man named Alex, and his last name starts with a J, and I'm sure you know who that is. The surveillance bots haven't quite figured it out with big spaces between words and abbreviations and sarcasm and euphemism. So we use that as long as we can to stay on some of these bigger platforms and not lose a lot of you guys that way. So anyway, I want to talk about the Matrix, which is really appropriate to the season, actually, and to what's going on in the world, and to understanding the news stories in a way that it is not what we're trained to do, really. And The Matrix is as you probably know, it's a classic sci-fi movie trilogy that has a lot of relevance to what we call real life, what's going on around us that our senses pick up. And it's got a lot of lessons in it that we could learn if we're open to it and we see them. And in the movie, I'm talking about particularly the first Matrix movie of the three, the world is almost completely controlled by programs, what they call programs, believing that they have to perceive things and act in a certain way because they identify that with the programs. They think they are the programs, but they're not. And they just don't realize it. So Neo wants to help them wake up, and he learns that most of them are too scared. They're just holding on to the programs like a bird holds onto the bars in the cage in the classic fable about that sort of thing. You open the door to let the bird fly out, and the bird's terrified, and it holds onto the bars on the other side, waiting for you to close the door so things go back to normal. And that's kind of how humans, all of us, act most of the time, and mostly in ways we don't even perceive. So some of the people, though, that Neo meets have experienced enough that they're ready enough to be perceptive and receptive to what he's trying to show them and tell them, so they can be reached. So does that remind you of anything at all whatsoever? It's like once a person has been through enough lessons in life, something happens, and they start to see everything differently. And that could be you right now, me, or any of us. It's very fortunate when that happens. Can be kind of scary if you let it, but what it opens up for you is worth it. So what I'm suggesting for today, even though I don't have quite all the news because it's only Tuesday and not Saturday, why don't we try it out and see how your perception is, whether it's clear or programmed, what kind of labels you identify with, whether you're thinking that you really are a program or a combination of programs without even really consciously thinking about it because you're so used to it. It's hard to look at yourself. It's easy to evaluate others all the time, and most of us do that 24 hours a day. But what happens if you turn that perception back on yourself. Actually, it's something you're never supposed to even imagine because of what it opens up. And you have to remember, you're not going to see clearly if you're wrapped up in, you're really busy condemning other people, or wrapped up in hatred and anger of anyone, or if you're wrapped up in any form of fear, which is pretty much what dominates most of us almost all the time. And then if you get into anger and hatred of people, it's almost always masking fear and the intense determination not to look at yourself, because that's where the power is. I know this is a news evaluation show, but it's about relevance of the news and implications and what it means for you and what it suggests to do about what's happening, and not just feel worse and worse because of all the bad things in the world, because that's pretty useless. It just ties up your energy for nothing. And if you're trying to get rid of fear so that you can see clearly, the program says fear is inevitable. That if A happens, you have to feel B. That was never true. Things like fear are optional, but you can't drop it by force, any kind of force. It's got to be a combination that you can only hit a certain combination to do it. That is really the key to dropping those things without willpower or stress. And that's a combination of deep relaxation, but not the kind when you go to sleep, the kind when you're wide awake, but you're not worried about anything. And the program also says if you're not worried about thousands of things in your life, you're not a responsible person. Something's wrong with you. That's a fake program. There's a lot of fake programs. And we've walked around identifying with them forever. Well, not quite forever, but almost. So deep relaxation with wide awake observation and attention. See if you can do that. Not just for a minute, but if you like it and you see what it could lead to as your new state all the time, instead of living in a fake program like the people that Neo was trying to reach. So why don't we try it out on a few things that are going on in the world, so we can talk about world events. So check how you react and what you perceive, because these are all emotionally charged subjects, right? And you are trained to react in certain ways. And on most of these issues, there's two distinct sides, not only in the U.S. where I'm talking from, but much of the world. And people just hold on to their side that they're supposed to identify with in the program, that they're thinking that they are. And they have to fight the other side because they're right and the other side's wrong. And all the emotional state that goes with that determines how you perceive what the news is. But even more importantly, it determines and deeply affects how you decide you should respond, what it means you need to do in your life. So, for example, in the U.S. this week, two sides are ramping up the conflict about the wall on the southern border between the U.S. and Mexico. That's a border about 2,000 miles long. And right now it's just almost completely open and porous. That was encouraged by the previous administration in Washington, that their plan was to bring in unlimited number of people illegally with no checking on who they were. They could include drug dealers, terrorists, people with deadly diseases, whatever, and people who needed welfare right away, just unlimited numbers. And that was being proposed as humanitarian, right? Even though, of course, anybody that wasn't in the program would see immediately that it would destroy your country. But it was still a really nice thing to do, and anything less would be racist and xenophobic and stuff like that. But what if you break the program? So looking at the sides that are functioning, in the usual conflict. One of the president's advisors, named Stephen Miller, was on the TV saying that whatever's necessary, it was a very intense emotional confrontation with the interviewer, whatever was necessary to build the border wall would be built, would be done, because without a totally controlled border, you don't have a country. It's just obviously true. I mean, if you drop a set of talking points and a lines and how you were programmed to think that this is, the UN and other forces want us to think this is really mean, but no, it's just, do you want your country or not? And then you can develop a normal legal immigration program where the people that you feel like would really love your country and help it to develop and become more prosperous and free, and all the good values that should be in it for people working to improve themselves and their neighbors, their neighborhoods. And like John Kennedy said, ask one of his many famous lines, ask what you can do for your country, not what it can do for you. In other words, not all the free programs where you can just lie around and criticize. And actually, in the case of a lot of the people coming in from the southern border of the U.S., they're not coming in to see what they can do for the country. They're coming in to destroy it. They're chanting things that are not friendly. So on the other side, that says the wall is immoral, obviously uncaring, mean, racist, even though it's not a wall against a certain race. It's just a wall, of whatever works to build it out of. They're saying that this is completely immoral and unethical. And the leader of the opposition party, a lady named Nancy Pelosi at the moment, is saying that they would rather leave the government completely shut down, nobody getting the benefits they're supposed to get in their program or anything. All those people starve. They would rather have it shut down permanently, she said forever, instead of funding the wall to secure the border, because it would be so evil. And we're kind of reminded of the communists and the socialists and Democrats that were in Southern California recently, where the border was, really in contest, and the governor and the legislature there were saying, we're not going to help secure the border at all. It's immoral and really crazy stuff. And the people down there were chanting, no border, no wall, no USA at all. And what that means is they're telling the truth. They're saying, with no border and no wall, there's no country. So whatever kind of wall works, whether it's a fence or the military on the border to make sure nobody's just running across it, they have to go through the legal process. Would that be a bad thing? According to the past president, the one just before this one, not only would it not be a bad thing, it would be great. And they were giving people free bus passes, no check at the border, no health check, no nothing, and just go to whatever city you want and get on welfare. It was supposed to be great. And that's still what that opposition party believes would really be good. So if we drop the programs and forget about fighting the other party and forget about, vehemently saying how stupid the other party is, or just drop that. That's all programs. See, that's the exercise we're doing during this particular broadcast. It's not just, sit there like a zombie, look at the news and say, oh yeah, things are really terrible. Now let's go get drunk or whatever, because it's so terrible. I'm suggesting a different way. Not make yourself into a zombie because it's so painful to look at what's happening, but drop fear, and then you don't have to get drunk to feel better. Actually, I feel a lot better than getting drunk. And I don't mean just drunk with alcohol, drunk with anything that distracts you from what's really going on. That's called a drug, even if it's not a physical drug. If it's any kind of distraction, if it's a power trip over somebody else, or getting into an argument to show how stupid everybody else is, or whatever it is. That's a drug, because you do it for the purpose of becoming unconscious of what's bothering you. All kinds of forms of that. So I'm saying, look at this. Just try looking at it with no program. Would having no border be a bad thing, even if no country can exist? And what it reminds me of is John Lennon's great song, I think it's a great song, called Imagine. Imagine, what was it? Imagine there's no countries. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for. No religion, too. In other words, he didn't say no God, no devotion, no connection to whatever great spiritual being. He said no religion. In other words, nothing to fight over. You don't need the religion if you have a direct experience and you live in it, because it's no longer a belief, it's your reality. So why can't we just do that? It sounds really good, but the thing is, it assumes something very important. Do you know what that is? I want you to participate, even though I can't see you through the camera. Do you think this is all just totally stupid, or what do you think? What has to be assumed in order to make John Lennon's song a positive reality? See, to do that, to have no border, no wall, no USA at all, or no France at all, no UK at all, no, any country, fill in the blank. All the other countries around you that can reach you and impact you have to be peaceful and prosperous and free and run by the principles of mutual respect. Do no harm. Love. You know what? Do no harm, like they used to have for the Hippocratic Oath for the medical profession before they realized that most of their treatments were killing people. So they couldn't really honestly say that, so they're kind of diverted off at the moment. But if the countries around you are not like that, it's like living in a violent part of town and taking the doors off your house because having doors is racist or xenophobic or something, right? So what do you think? How long would you have a house? How long would you be able to live there? And if you drop labels, having to prove you're right and the other person's wrong, it's not hard to see things more clearly, more closer to how they actually are. That's the point. I want to make a point of this broadcast instead of just, all right, here's a list of the 10 most horrible things that are happening right now. It's what good is that? It just makes you want to go take the drug of your choice and forget about it. I'm suggesting we have a different option. And the drug approach has long-term bad results for you and everybody you care about. So it's good to see what drugs you're using in your life, even if they're not physical ones, and see if you have a way to drop them. And it's not mean or heartless to keep the doors on your house, at least until you can help make the neighborhood a lot better. So what else happened this week besides the whole wall thing? And the wall thing's not just about the U.S., right? Maybe that's the only place that they're publicly looking at whether to actually build this wall. But other countries in Europe are a long way toward being destroyed because they don't have the border security, and they just went along with the United Nations program to destroy individual countries so that there could be a one world government promoted as the way to peace and harmony and love and everything. But if you notice, you're surrounded by a lot of people who are not exactly peaceful and loving and harmonious. And if you destroy your country, then you're at the mercy of everybody, and whatever form of global government replaces the one you have. And judging from the people who are working hard on that program, the lower level of employees in the UN really think that they're working to save the world, most of them. because they're completely unconscious, even though they think they've really got it together. It's the opposite. But they're being used by the people at the top levels to as tools to implement global tyranny, and they're not going to be happy with the end result. So what else can we look at in a couple minutes here? Well, in the U.S., and this again is relevant to other countries, there's a federal judge that said Obamacare is unconstitutional. And one political party says that it's great. And, one political party, can't read my own notes and bullet points of what I want to talk to you about while we have time. One party says that's great that it's declared unconstitutional, even though it'll be taken to the Supreme Court. And the other party says, well, that's terrible. Obviously, every person on earth deserves free health care, free food if they can't afford it, basically free everything. And I understand where they're coming from, because in a way, they're right. But let's not step too far ahead right now. And Jonathan Gruber, one of the chief designers of Obamacare, that was on video laughing at the American public, saying, well, thank God they're so stupid. They fall for something like this. This is sold to them as free health care, which everybody would say is wonderful if they don't know better. And that means they are going to be forced to buy a certain program from a private insurance company. And the profits of those companies, when this was passed, went way up. They made huge amounts of money, and people who thought it was going to be free, some of them had to start paying $5,000 a year to the IRS, which was the designated enforcer for this wonderful free health care. If they didn't want it, you had to get it. And the government, of course, doesn't have the ability to require you to buy anything from a private company in the U.S. or really the right in any country. It's just that's acknowledged in the Constitution in the U.S., which is something special. And it applies to people all over the world, acknowledged by their governments or not. So Jonathan Gruber, who thought the public was so stupid that thank God they accepted Obamacare, and the people in Congress who are all controlled by blackmail and bribes, they voted for it. He says even the Supreme Court doesn't understand the Constitution, that everybody deserves free everything, basically, is the message. And we talked about why it wouldn't be unconstitutional briefly, but the idea is that according to the U.S. Constitution, which says in the Declaration of Independence, this is really the rights of everybody worldwide, the rights to be free primarily and protected from invasion and stuff like that. And it gave the federal government only a few specified powers, and specifically said nothing else could be done by the federal government. So since then, obviously, it's become almost 100% criminal operation. Nobody's supposed to understand what the enumerated powers mean anymore. Forcing you to buy anything, healthcare or anything else from a private insurance company, is not one of the enumerated powers for the federal government. Controlling what kind of healthcare that you choose is not one of the enumerated powers. This is dropping labels. I'm not identifying with parties here, or liberal or conservative or anything. Those are all labels. And as soon as you have any labels that you have to identify with, you have blinders, self-applied blinders. And what if your party or your label's wrong about something? It's really hard to acknowledge it or even see it. So I'm suggesting just try the experiment of looking at things with no blinders and no labels, open to who you actually are beyond the program, as Neo would tell you. And controlling the kind of healthcare you give your kids is not part of it, as I was saying. And now, even with the healthcare that there is, it's such a tyranny in the U.S. and most other places that if parents decide a type of healthcare for their child, or sometimes themselves, that is not according to the tyranny established with the partnership between the government and the medical industry, their kids are kidnapped by government agents in the U.S. called CPS. I mean, they're government terrorism organization. I'm sure they occasionally do save kids from parents that are going to kill them or something. And I mean, running after them with a knife, that sort of thing. But to intrude on a family because the government doesn't agree with your idea of healthcare is basically terrorism. And they're doing that all over the place, not just in the U.S., but in the U.K., parts of Europe, and other parts of the world. So the government doesn't have those rights. That's terrorism type stuff. But does everybody deserve great health care, whether they can afford it or not? Of course. So how do you resolve that apparently impossible situation? First, like we've been talking about, you got to break out of all your program beliefs and be brave enough, which really you have to be pretty brave to do this, because we've been using those as security blankets like Linus and Peanuts did, you know. And if you can just recite your belief, you don't have to see if it's true or not. You got a group that all supports each other in whatever belief they have, and you don't have to question it, even though real science means the science is never settled on anything. You got to question everything you believe and that you believe, and keep upgrading it. And the same if you're really involved in caring about God or spiritual things or any great spiritual teacher that you're connected to, you're not going to get closer unless you question everything. And one reason we don't is we think, what if we find out something terrible? Subconsciously, the fear is, what if my belief is wrong? That'd be like the end of the universe, right? But that's showing that we have no faith at all that the ultimate reality is something wonderful. And people who have really been brave enough to go there have found out it is something incredible, incredibly wonderful. You don't have to be afraid that you're going to find out that the world has no point and life is pointless. You just suffer a lot and then you die, and no, there's more to it than that. But it takes some bravery on your own part to find out what it is, because atheism is just as much of a label as any religion. What's the reality behind it? Are you brave enough to explore, like a wilderness area? There's something good hidden there. It's worth finding. So emergency medicine and trauma care, as they are now, could do a lot better by replacing the toxic drugs that they're sold by the medical industry with alternatives. There are some great doctors that are teaching emergency medicine with less toxic material. But mostly what I've found is that people in trauma and emergency care are incredibly great people, really great doctors. Dr. Stephen Greer, that we talk a lot about with hidden technologies and things like that, was one of those great emergency doctors, and they're saving people's lives all over the place. But the other parts of healthcare are different. But before we get into that, states have their own programs to deal with costs of paying for a person's health care if they can't afford it. But ultimately, when a person can't afford it, it shouldn't be left to the government. If people are not completely impoverished in a society and living in fear, then the natural state is overwhelming spontaneous charity, especially in good religious organizations or other organizations set up to help their communities. And doctors, we talked to Ron Paul, used to give 1/3 of their time giving free care. That wasn't insurance. That was normal. Private charities tend to flourish when society is prospering. So why is that not happening now? Is it because we have to have a higher minimum wage or more free programs from the government? One political party, and most of the sincere people in it, say, obviously, yes, government should be given much more power, should be raising taxes tremendously. Oh, but only on the bad rich people, right? And sometimes they say, well, yeah, some of these super rich people are willing to pay more taxes. In general, no, they're not. They might do that on an official capacity on the personal level, but most of their activities are through other groups, primarily huge private foundations and things like that. They're not going to pay tax. When they say tax the rich people, they mean anybody left in society who has prosperous business or something like that, so that everybody's pushed into austerity and poverty and dependent on the government, which gives you free money, which they think is wonderful. And with that, you get all these conditions. And if you don't follow exactly what the government wants you to do, that's fine. They just cut off all your survival money. So that's the hidden trap that the parties that think that the government giving you everything free is the answer don't understand. They talk about free market, but no. Well, no, they don't talk so much about free market. They talk about government control. But the other party in the U.S., the Republicans, and similar parties in other countries say, well, no, we shouldn't give help to the poor people so much because the free market will take care of it. But there is no free market in any major country that I know of right now. And what there is collusion between governments and big industry. And they're not human-friendly at all. That's not a free market. That's not free market capitalism. It's nothing like that. That's basically when governments collude with the biggest corporations. That's called fascism. That's real fascism. Mussolini talked about it in World War II in Italy, and he called it corporatism, but it's the same thing. And that's what is dominant in all the major countries right now. Free market capitalism is totally different. It means you personally, whether you're structured as a person or your own corporation or whatever, you do whatever you want to make as much money as you want. You give almost none of it in taxes to any authority. But you can do that because you operate on the principle like the doctors are supposed to follow, which is do no harm. If you do that, then you graduate into a position where you can handle free market capitalism, and it actually helps everybody. The government corporate partnerships, overseen by the central banks that are in every major country that are there to rob the population, that's their function, and to cause depressions and boom and bust cycles so that they can steal all the real wealth from the people. That's their function. G. Edward Griffin has explained it. See the archive on Lost Arts Radio. And Ron Paul talks about it a lot. It's super obvious, and virtually nobody in government will discuss it. It's a criminal organization. The person that I know of in America who came closest to shutting it down was John Kennedy, and apparently issued an executive order that's still on the books that is not followed, that was right before he got killed. He did some unacceptable things to the real power structure, and that was one of the big ones. There were others that were as big or bigger. If you remove the central banks, which should be one of the first items on the agenda of any party that honestly wants people to be well off, the Republicans that are sitting there in America saying, well, free market will take care of all the poor people, and then they leave the central bank there to rob everybody blind, they're not honest. And the Democrats that say, well, no, the government should just have all these programs and pay for everybody and don't use any energy, and a whole bunch of stuff they say, no borders, no walls, etc. But no, that's really not intelligent. That's what you see when you're completely in the matrix. If they want people to be taken care of, item number one, eliminate central banks completely. They're above the law. They can't be audited. They have no place in any free country at all. And that's one of the main reasons that the U.S. military had to destroy Libya in cooperation with NATO and things, is because not only did they not have a centrally controlled central bank under BIS, but the leader of that country was about to establish a bank and sharing the benefits of it with all of Africa, helping them to be independent and free, and it was all based on gold. Now that's real welfare, okay? It's not controlling people's lives at all, and it's not all these high taxes. Those are counterproductive. In fact, the so-called progressive income tax is a primary plank of the Communist Manifesto. It's a short book. Just read it if you want to. You can find out for yourself. But if you get rid of the tyrannical institutions like the central bank being number one, now you can see prosperity come back. You can see less and less poor people. It's not that they died. It's that they got money. It's normal, okay? And the ones who can't work or take care of themselves, in a prosperous society, there's so much private charity that you don't need all these illegal government programs, and you don't need to steal it from one group and give it to another group in the name of being liberal or something like that. It's not even necessary. The reason it looks necessary to some people now is that you've got most of the money being robbed by the central bank, which in America has taken away, I think, 98 to 99% of the value of the currency since they came into power in 1913 under the guise of preventing depressions and stuff. So there are depressions, soon after that. And that continues. And they're in the process right now, which a lot of people don't realize, of starting to destroy the economy in America and more places by systematic, constant raising of interest rates. And that's enough to kill any economy. And the reason they're doing it in America now, and it's never on the news, is that because the major news media is complicit in destroying the country, not just in America, but other places too. It's probably one of the biggest threats to the survival of the country is major fake media owned by the central global corporations. That's happening in America. And they want to crash the economy, blame it on the current president who's questioned too much of what they're doing, and go back to the austerity destitution program where everything's free and everyone's starving, culminating in a situation like Venezuela instead of the utopia that's promised. You bring back freedom and you get rid of these illegal partnerships. You don't have to artificially create prosperity. It's going to create itself. But none of the major parties are really talking about the bigger picture of what has to happen to create that. The other thing that has to happen for there to be real prosperity and also satisfy some of the concerns of the people that call themselves liberal and tend to care much more about environmental issues than the people who call themselves conservative. A lot of them are totally out to lunch and don't realize that environmental issues are really important. It's your life support system. You cannot live without them, without addressing them correctly. Well, one way to address them correctly is not to force everybody into austerity, which is ridiculous. That's what these global pacts under the UN are trying to do, and pay the super rich people to oversee everybody's poverty. But release real energy technology that is already developed, it's already perfected, it's already available. It's being violently suppressed with intimidation and murder. It's not solar and wind. It's way better than that. It's clean. It's free once it's acquired the basic setup. And the people in charge know this quite well. And how that will be released, I don't know. Dr. Greer has got a really great program where he's saying people who are sitting on these technologies, be brave. He means risk your life. Bring a prototype to him that works. Dr. Stephen Greer, and he'll give the inventor quite a bit of money, but he'll suddenly disseminate it all over the world and it won't be stoppable. This terrifies the power structure. Many people have died from even thinking about this, but it needs to be done. And a lot of the pollution that the oil industry causes and the total disaster that is nuclear power, and even coal, which there's plenty of oil and coal, they're just really dirty energy sources. Democrats are right on that, but plunging the economy into austerity and poverty is not a brilliant solution. Unleash the hidden technologies that are already there. If these kind of things are done, and the same thing with agriculture and food, which is tied to real health care, you cannot have with chemical agriculture. I know that's completely politically unacceptable to say that, but for the moment, while I'm still here, I'm telling you the truth, that even organic agriculture is below the standard that it should be at, and the government's busily trying to undermine the organic standards right now. We just had a great talk, which will be aired soon, with the attorney on that for Organic Consumers Association, which is a really great group, and I support them. Ronnie Cummins has been on the show with us more than once, and they're doing great work. But I wish they would see that this liberal progressive thing is national suicide, and that you can accomplish the goals of it, environmental beauty and clean environment around you, and get rid of pollutants, and real health care for everybody. You can do that without government programs, without higher taxes, without controlling your life, without telling you what to do, without political correctness, without eliminating free speech. There's another way. And if they would, the people on the left side who do care about the environment would understand this, left and right could come together. Another idea that would terrify the power structure. But it's either that or give up the experiment of life on this planet, which is really hanging by a thread right now. So, how are these beautiful hidden solutions possible? And it's not through the usual kind of government programs, but if you had a real government program like, see, the current president, or any president that's got a good heart and good motives and is there to help the country, should go, even if the media is trying to promote his death, which the media is doing now because he's politically incorrect in a lot of ways. A good leader should, the government program is, go on television right now, talk directly to the people, not a press conference with all these criminal fake media people trying to shut you down and make you look bad. Leave them out. Go on TV direct to the people, like several times a week, starting instantly. Tell them the truth about the real energy technology that we could have now. We got to be at the point where even if we die the next day from saying these things, we do it anyway. Because we're permanent beings anyway. Even if you're killed, in quotes, it's a big misnomer. You're not the physical body. You're going to be around somewhere anyway. So use the time well and realize we're here for minutes anyway. Tell the truth. Go on. The leader of each country should go on, tell about the hidden technologies. And they've got information, if they want it, about where it could be gotten out, even though the deep state will try to kill them for it. Tell the truth about healthcare. It's not drugs. It's not invasive procedures. It's not covering up symptoms so that you'll be unaware of what's really going on in the body. That's not real healthcare. Giving people access to that is not access to healthcare. It's access to assisted suicide. That's the truth about it. So doctors who are really caring about the health of people should first educate themselves and realize that drugs are almost never needed for anything. Susceptibility to infectious disease can be eliminated almost 100%. Most infectious diseases can be killed with non-toxic modalities. You don't need the dangerous drugs that destroy the immune system. Injecting things into people, especially kids, that are toxic to make them immune from disease. It's amazing that anyone ever fell for that. You look at the history of it, it hasn't worked. Read Dissolving Illusions by Suzanne Humphries or other books like that. You can find out. So how can these things really change? Back to Morpheus and Neo. If you, not the whole audience out there, just you, if you break the programming, without saying a word, you can wake up other people. It's that powerful. You know how cell towers work, and they put out this frequency of microwave or millimeter wave energy, and it's designed to destroy the intercellular communication in your body and your brain. And if they turn up the power, to actually exterminate life. Remember, you've heard about that maybe. You're more powerful than that, but not on the harmful frequency. You're more powerful on life frequency. What you do with your mind, whether you stay in the program, determines whether that comes out. And if you do let it out, you don't have to talk. You're going to have such an impact. It's about resonance, quantum entanglement, real connection, real power. Real power is not malicious. That's the biggest secret by far, who you are, even more than the secret energy technologies that are clean and free, that are already available or should be available. Who you are is bigger secret than that. If you're interested in that, you have work to do on yourself, and you find out this is another thing that you're not supposed to realize. Even the people that really care about helping the world think that it's all by going out and convincing other people to change, right? And don't you see the chemtrails overhead? What's wrong with you? And, how could you favor nuclear power? How could you not want to have organic farming and everything? And then you accomplish being able to fight over really good causes and end up with more people hating each other. If you do the same outer work, with like the people in the yellow vests are all over Europe right now, and they're getting into Canada, even in the UK, and they're saying we're tired of the oppressive government, basically, and the open borders policy of the UN to get all the countries to commit suicide. Just the upper levels of rulers just laughing at them for the fact that we'd be willing to do this to ourselves. It's really well motivated, I think, but the effect of that will be determined by the mentality of the people who are in those protests and the people supporting them all around the world, and the people who are quietly doing what we're talking about here, which is dropping your own programming, not by force, because that does not work. That's like trying to kill one program with another program, and you end up still programmed thinking that you're free, and you can't do it that way. So anyway, I'm going to end a little bit early today, a few minutes early, because I think what we've already covered is there's so much there for you and me and all of us to really absorb. I think it's either, if you're not going to look at it seriously in your own life, then you don't need me to be up here for more minutes anyway. You've got stuff to do. If you are going to look at it, you've already got what you need to look at. Whatever you're doing, whatever your responsibilities are, whatever your family interactions are during the holidays, which is, by the way, is supposed to be really happy, right? And it's when a lot of people have heart attacks and die in the middle of the night or during the day, and families get torn apart by political fighting and all this kind of stuff. And in the current environment in America and Europe and UK and many parts of the world, families are getting destroyed and won't talk to each other anymore because they're trying to convert the other side to agree with them and see that they're right and you guys are wrong, and does not have good results. And I'm just saying that there's another way. There's not way A or way B, and that's it. It's like to get people the real health care, which I totally agree should be available to everybody. And it seems impossible, like the so-called liberal progressive left side says, we need more government control, we need more taxes, just to make sure you're safe, and we have to make sure you can't say things that are hurtful, and we have to decide what's hate speech, right? Because, well, nobody should hate anybody, and we're going to make sure they don't by telling you the words that you can't say anymore. We have to control basically everything you do to make sure everything's great. They don't get that they are carrying out the unspoken orders of the people that want to create tyranny. And that's not healthy for anybody. Freedom is healthy. But how do you get freedom to be healthy when you leave people to be free and they start companies like Monsanto and Bayer, which are absolutely out there to destroy most of the world, thinking that the leaders of it are going to be left in the elite making trillions of dollars while everybody else is dying from their products. That's not a very good kind of freedom, right? So it all comes down to consciousness. How are you going to affect the consciousness of other people that are, especially the people that are so programmed that they're playing the part of the worst bad guys in the world right now? Very top-level bankers, top-level corporate censors like, the social media giants and people like that. They have a lot of money and power, and they're very arrogant, and they think that they've pretty much wrapped up the game, and the useless eaters in the population are going to be gone soon and all that. And they want you to feel helpless, that there's nothing you can do. And it's a good time to consider whether there's anything you can do, because one of the things in the so-called holiday season is you're supposed to reevaluate your life. I think a lot of people look at it that way, but instead of really doing that, they rememorize their point of view. They remain 100% within the matrix and don't realize that all the beauty is perceived when you leave the matrix. All the things that you want to do as a well-meaning conservative or liberal person fighting for your point of view, it all becomes possible when you get out of the matrix and realize, wow, we're all on the same side. It's like John Lennon's song, but you get to a point where you make it actually possible. And it's not by what you say to the other side or people on your own side. It's what you become. And fortunately, what you have to become is who you already are. You just have to, you drop the programming and you're going to experience it directly. And everything gets answered. And we could actually change things here for the better instead of just permanent fighting. Now, I'm not a pacifist, and I'm not saying you shouldn't defend yourself. I completely support firearms rights and all that, but that's not how this is going to be solved. It's going to be through consciousness. And even if there's 1 in 1,000 people, that are listening that get this and actually do it, you have so much power that you could change the whole thing. So that's the message. If you want to get into that more deeply, check out planetaryhealingclub.com. And I hope you have a great Christmas. Because we're not allowed to say it, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas, whatever religion or no religion or anything you are. I just want to say, free speech, Merry Christmas, and in the best way, non-religious way possible. I'm just wishing that for you, and I appreciate you sharing your time with us. And we'll see you again shortly.